Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas. This is how to make a zombie horde game in Unity, and welcome to the 15th and final episode. So this time what we're going to do is we're going to bring everything together that we've created into a nice little package, and we'll explore a couple of different options of where you can take the game design to from this point. So altogether we've created the simplistic process of spawning zombies, shooting them, killing them, and doing all kinds of things. We have menus, we have everything we need. So from here on in, all it really means is you guys can take everything you've learned from here and advance those skills further, whether it means going into more tutorials or just exploring things yourself. An idea, of course, is always the asset store. And if we go to the asset store now, there's many things that you can take from here, both free and paid, so it is entirely up to you what you do. So for example, zombie, if we put that in, we get loads of results, and obviously here's the one we've used. You could use these if you wanted to perhaps pay some more to have different variants, but the process is still going to be the same like it is with our main zombie here in the model. And we have all the animations. As long as you use the same principle for these enemies, whatever type, you can't really go wrong. Same applies for the scenes and the visuals that you see. It's all down to you and how you make it look. So along the way, when you create an executable standalone file, you're going to need to know at least some of the settings. So if we go to Edit and go to Project Settings and Player right there, we're presented with all this here. Now, some of it may look daunting, it may look a bit confusing, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. So, company name is pretty obvious, isn't it, really? So, JV Game Studios. Product name, I don't really have a name for this at the moment, but obviously you guys have a name for your zombie horde game. So, I'm going to put a cool horde thing, I'm not sure. And then over here we've got little options for icons. So an icon doesn't necessarily have to be an actual icon file. You can actually use a texture. So I'm going to go to my textures folder and I'm going to import this little texture right here, and all this is a snippet of the thumbnail that I use for these videos. So it's just a little square, and all I can do is drag and drop here, and we'll see that in action when we actually build the file itself. So cursor, it's up to you if you want to have a cursor. It's maybe relevant, maybe not. Down here we have a couple of options for mobile devices, for iPad, iPhones and whatnot, as well as Android and Facebook. Same principle applies for pretty much all of these here, but you'll find most settings here on the PC. So I'm just going to close that. So we should, I think by default, have it looking like this. And let's start with resolution and presentation. By default, yep, full screen. Most people play things full screen. Running background's probably not something to enable, but don't forget you can always change these settings, rebuild, and check things out to see how they look. Standalone player options, well, it's pretty self-explanatory, most of them. I think the main thing to note here, though, is whether you want it to by default be full screen. I think probably best to be that way. Icon, as we've already discussed, we've imported it here and it's brought everything else in down here by default, so we don't need to worry about creating any of these. It's already done for us. And here, splash image. Now the splash image, you would automatically think that this is something in-game. It isn't. The splash image is what appears on the configuration of when we run the game. So once again, that can be used as a texture. So I'm going to bring in this texture here, which is the thumbnail for this series. And I'm going to drag and drop that onto here. If you're using this for VR, you would have it here. And splash screen, we can't really have a splash screen because we're using this as the free version of Unity. If you pay for it, you would have the options and different ways of doing it here. But as I say, for now, this is just the way we're doing it, because everything we do in these tutorials is for free. So splash image, yep, that's all good. Other settings, we don't need to worry about too much of these for now, but please, by all means, feel free to take a look into things. And if you get things wrong, you can always reset them back to their original settings. And XR settings, that's only for VR, so we don't need to worry about that kind of stuff at the moment, because this isn't VR. I'm not a big fan of VR. I just don't see it as the way forward in video games, so it's not something that I would get into. But please, if you want to, I'm sure there's tutorials out there from other creators that are, go into loads of detail about all this stuff. So if we go along, we have, again, similar sort of settings for the mobile devices. If you need it, the icon is generally going to stay the same. It imports it from this to everything all the way across. But yeah, it's all this kind of thing. You work out what settings you want, how you want it to look, how you want it to feel. And don't forget, it's all in the play settings here as well. We've dealt with a little bit of these settings before, so it's something to explore. If we go to quality, we have a way of setting the different quality standards, and we can also rename them if we want to. You can see we have fantastic graphics and what's available. So by default, green, you can see fantastic on PC. That is the default level, because most people who play video games these days have a high power graphics card, so it's not something that they would struggle with. So it's up to you if you want to work your way through this. I would recommend at least taking a look through. If not, if you want to get to your final product, we'll do that now. If we go to File and Build Settings, you remember we've been here because we actually had a few scenes, and we've switched scenes between here and there. And I'm sure I've mentioned at some point, when switching scene, the light looks a little bit weird within Unity. It's like it doesn't work properly. And I'm pretty sure I would have said that that's not the case in the final version. So in this case, let's build that version. We're on PC, so let's click on Build and Run. You'll be prompted then to save the file as an executable, and we'll call this Zombie Horde, and then click on Save. Not entirely sure how long this will take. However, the bigger your project, the longer this will take. If it's a small project, like I think this is going to be a small project, you're not going to be looking at more than 60 seconds for it to process. You can see this moving along quite nicely now. But the idea is you would build it, you would wait a couple of minutes, maybe up to an hour if it was quite a large file. And as you can see here, Avast has decided it wants to scan the file, just in case. I made it, but you still want to scan it, but that's fine. And here we're presented, you can see, oh, it's gone, but I'm sure it'll be back. This is the splash right here, what I was referring to before. Like I said, you would think, maybe that should be within the game, but it's not. This is the splash it refers to. And you can see down here, we have the little icon that we had. By default, it isn't windowed because we wanted it full screen, and we have the resolution, fantastic, on the monitor. Let's press play. Let's try this out. So you can see the whole process of what we've done. There's our splash. Then we move on to the menu. Perfect. So let's go on easy. Abandon hospital. And away we go. We're in our game. Perfect. So there is a lot to it that you would need to work with more than anything, because everything I've taught you within this tutorial series is not basic, but it's something you build upon yourself. And I honestly would recommend taking a look in the asset store for many things and different ways and different things you can take and build upon for your own game. And remember, in the project settings here, there's tons of things that you can change. There's plenty of settings for you to go into here, and never be afraid to kind of play around and see what you can come up with. You'll be amazed at what Unity can actually do within the settings themselves. And if you want to expand on some of these levels, then that's entirely up to you. If you want to bring in more enemies, like, I don't know, this, if you want to pay a couple of dollars and bring this in, that's absolutely fine. So I think throughout this series we've learned quite a lot. There's been some cool things we've done. There's been some awesome things we've done. And, you know, we've had our fair share of bugs, glitches, and things that go wrong, but that always happens in game development. So don't worry about that one bit. So that is the end of this series. And I've at least given you the basics and the ingenuity to kind of go forth and create a zombie horde game. I've got plenty of other tutorials on the playlist, so please take a look there. And I would like to thank each and every patron who this series has been dedicated to, because this series is for patrons only. It will always be for patrons only. It will never be to the public unless of a patron shortfall. So, guys, once again, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who has watched this series through, and I would love to see what you have created for your Zombie Horde games. So guys, until next time, thank you very much for watching.